Man, I'm looking at our monitors and I'm seeing the entire internet just shift its attention to this show right now. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming. Too many. We don't want this big of an audience, do we?
Yeah.
Look, dude, look at them come in the door. Look at the number. It's going
okay. Yeah. We'll see.
I mean, no, seriously, I've thought about this, like I've thought about it many times. I don't want like a huge audience. Do you?
I
like millions. Do you want millions? Multiple millions? I'm into hundreds of thousands. That feels good to me.
Yeah.
Millions, it's not a fun place. I've been up there, like a couple of my shows, and certainly been in other shows, Rogan, etc. Where you get up into millions, and it's all stupid people screaming when you get up above that level. I don't know. What do you feel? Do you want to be super famous?
Are you content? I don't want people I've never met screaming at me as if I'm the TV and sending personal messages to me. Like, especially in politics. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
yeah, you really don't. You really, really don't. Take it from me. So can I tell a little story?
Yeah.
That's it brings everything together. So, like, if you've been watching this show for a while, you know that Michael is a drummer, percussionist, and that I pretended to be a shitty drummer 35 years ago when I was in college, and so I still like it. But anyway, so I guess my algorithm showed me or popped up on my Instagram or something, this amazing track with the drummer I'd never heard of named Ronnie Caspi. Do you know who Ronnie Caspi is?
No, I'm like not hip to the percussion world as I used to be.
It's okay. No, listen, you don't know this person because A, it's not a he. B, they're younger than you are. This person is a she, which is the first bummer for us about this. She's 24, I think now. Other bummer, Israeli. The greatest jazz drummer right now that I'm sure of this is this person, Ronnie Caspi, who's a 24-year-old Israeli woman. Just stunning, shocking. I can go on and on about how great she is as a drummer, but she's also part of the Avishai Cohen trio.
Yeah.
And Avishai Cohen. Okay. So you know Avishai.
I've seen him live. Yeah. He's great.
Oh my God. So have I. Yeah. But I saw him when he was a sideman. So he's my age. And when I was in New York, he was coming up in New York, and that's when I was going to all the jazz clubs, and he was a sideman bass player. He's one of the best bass players in the world over the last 2 or 3 decades. But so I saw him like as a sideman for a lot of other guys. And then he later moved back to Tel Aviv. He's Israeli, and he's formed multiple groups and bands, and one of them is his trio, which has its newest incarnation very recently. I think they've only been playing together for about a year and a half. And Ronnie Caspi is this drummer who came out of the Berklee School of Music, but she's Israeli, and she just turns out to be the most amazing phenom. Like, and I think she won Drummer of the Year by Drummer Magazine or something like that. But I'd never heard anything like this. The attack she has, I can go on and on, but she's amazing. But Avishai Cohen has this all-Israeli trio. The piano player, Guy Moskovich, I think his name is blows me away. He's like a combination of McCoy Tyner and Bill Evans, just utterly beautiful, phenomenal music that the three of them play. Each one of them by themselves is, I think, just a stupendous jazz musician and musician in general. Ronnie Caspi, if you're into drums, I tell you that this is something new. I've never seen anything or heard anything like this. She's utterly amazing. Her technique is on a different level than I've seen. All right, so I hear this music. It's not just the technique, and I could care less if it's great technique. It's the most beautiful and sophisticated music I've heard in many years, and it moved me to tears. And I remembered Avishai Cohen from watching him as a sideman, and I sort of forgot about him, and I never thought about him, at the time, right? I guess I knew he was Israeli. He has a very Hebrew name, so usually that means they're Israeli, and I didn't think about it at the time because, yes, certainly Israel has always been a political controversial issue, and people associated with Israel have always had a little bit of a either taint or something. You kind of have a little feeling about them that's different because of Israel's particular historical position and etc. But boy, I hear this music and I see that, oh shit, this is the Abishai Cohen trio. I know. Oh wow, and this is the most beautiful music I've heard in a long time. Tears running down my face. It's so beautiful. And here we are at this moment that I think probably everybody who's at all into politics has faced, dealt with, thought about, which is about the intersection of art and politics, and what one should do in their judgment, their valuation of art in regard to politics, whether one should ever even consider doing that at all, whether we should just wall off the politics and the art. Anyway, so of course I immediately, and I feel, man, it brings out the inner totalitarian in you, things like this, right? Because my first thought was, this is the most beautiful music ever. My second thought was, oh my God, I hope that they haven't said things, right? Mm-hmm. And so I go right to Google and I Google the shit out of all three of them. And I couldn't find any statement whatsoever by Abishai Cohen on the current war. He made some vague statements that were fine during the second intifada of all things, like 20 years ago. Ronnie Caspi, I can't find anything political about her whatsoever. And then the piano player, actually, Guy Moskovich, I think his name is, did issue like a very lengthy statement about the Gaza war and about people's judgments of Israelis. And he most certainly is not pro-Palestine, but I have to say I agree with everything he says. It's on Instagram. People can look it up. My point is that I then was super relieved and felt like I could continue to listen to this incredible music. And I could, I hope to one day go see Abishai Cohen trio in person. And I thought, oh, now I can do that. Now it's okay. Do you see this? It's just totalitarianism just takes over.
Yeah.
When you're a political person and you have strongly felt opinions about issues, it requires, at least for me, I think most people, it requires like Herculean willpower to not judge people. And this goes to like my feelings about my various friends who are pro-Israel that I'm sorting out every day, my feelings about. It's a weird, hard, difficult thing. And basically, I'm on the side of the people who are against me in this, because I've always been against making the personal political. That was when feminism went totalitarian in the 1960s and 70s. That was feminism. That was the big feminist leaders at the time made that slogan, the personal is political. And so all of a sudden, we're all looking inside of our relationships, inside our bed sheets, and at our partner. We're thinking we're about our inner feelings, our inner thoughts. And by the way, that's the origin of wokeness. That is the origin of wokeness. The psychologizing, shaming, sort of American Maoism light thing that we've seen as sort of the principal dynamic within wokeism started with feminism, and that very idea that was promulgated by the feminists of the 60s and 70s. You want to know what's really political, they said? Look at your relationship with your wife. Look at how you have sex with her. Look at the way you think about women. That's what's political. So when I see this beautiful music being played by people who might possibly have bad politics, and I don't even know that they do at this point, but it doesn't even matter. I had to pause, and I think that's the saddest thing.
I came to the conclusion that it is so hard to make it as a musician that I have like nothing but total forgiveness to all musicians and whatever stance they hold all the time. I think,
really? Yeah. Wait, hold on. Total forgiveness?
Pretty much, yeah. This is where this is the line I drew in the sand, though. This is where it started to affect me, was with COVID. And that really struck me hard, because that was what I viewed as the music industry committing suicide. Because what you had was all of civilization being shut down, and the government totalitarianly deeming what parts of society are essential and non-essential. And the arts were at the forefront of being shut down and leading the way for saying we're not important. And no artist, except for Kid Rock, stood up to this and said, you know what? Music actually is essential. This is something, coming together and hearing music, that's part of the human experience. We're not going to stop this just because of whatever the current situation may be.
Hey man, Rage Against the Machine stood up. What are you talking about?
Did they?
They stood.
Did they?
They had a vaccine. They had a vaccine mandate at all of their concerts.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
and I believe a mask mandate too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, and then they campaigned for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do with that? By the way, you know, the ultimate, the iconic, the apotheosis of the rebel rock and roll band being the most establishment tools we've ever seen. Well, what do you do with that?
They're not, and I mean, their origins, you know this, they're from Harvard. They're not an anti-establishment rock and roll band.
The guitarist.
Yeah.
My buddy, one of my good friends was, what's his face's roommate at Harvard.
Morello.
Yeah, Morello. Yeah. So I have, but anyway, no, they're not all from Harvard. In fact, it's not, that's a cheap shot at them. They're SoCal skate punk dudes. That's Zach and well, art and politics is what we're getting at. And no, I love I mean, of course, as always, you have the healthy attitude about this issue. But gosh, I've been challenged, and I've often, it's usually been easy for me. I've often had an easy time separating the two. Ezra Pound, fascist. I mean, like fascist, but you know, great poet. I don't have a problem with that. This stuff, though, when it gets into mass murder, I get a little squeamish. I just have a hard time when people are promoting mass murder that's actually happening, and that their words, because they have a large platform, actually do contribute to the mass murder happening. That's the hard thing for me. Anyway, what are we going to do though about Israel? Multiple thoughts about Avishai Cohen. This thing I had, you know, and I'm also just thinking about, and this is a micro level thing. If you're Jewish or Israeli or care about this, you will care about this. But like I do, I'm having increasingly sympathetic feelings for Israelis like that, like those who are not political, especially. If they're political, if they like throw themselves into the fray, the political fray, but fine, I don't give a shit. You're in, you know, gloves are off, whatever. But it's the people who are not political, especially artists who are not political, and they just want to make music that's beautiful. They just want to paint pictures that are beautiful. And Avishai Cohen, I've heard him say this many times, and he said it actually in a recent concert just a few days ago. He said this on stage. He said something like, his only political statement all night long, and it was so perfect. He said, "Thank you for letting us do some good in the world these days, for making something beautiful in the world these days." You know, it was very clear what he was talking, or producing something beautiful. There's also maybe an implicit critique of Israel in that. You know, it was like, we three Israelis producing something good. He kind of said, but no, I love people who are not political. In fact, I literally love people who are not political currently. And they're the only people I would ever really love with all my heart, are people who are not political. I've never been in a relationship with someone who's political. I never will. So it's a tricky thing, but again, when we're talking about mass murder, active mass murder of children, let's not forget that piece. You know, that's not just about killing children, but is also about pushing the entire world closer to Armageddon. You know, and we are due as a global society, if you believe in such things, for another world war. You know, it's about time. 80 years. We've got 80 whole years without a world war. Goodness, we need one. it's hard for me to see people, especially as I said, with people with major platforms who actually do push political discourse that results in particular policies, which some of my friends are that influential in media. They do, and they literally have Congress people on their shows, and they, those Congress people then go on to pass legislation that leads us to things like the Iraq War. It's real hard for anyone to be pro-Israel right now. I just find that to be difficult to stomach. But anyway, so Avishai Cohen, thank God. But I was thinking, like, what if he came out as like this hardcore Zionist and he was like, we need to bomb Gaza more? And how would I deal with that? And I am sorry to say, or maybe I'm not sorry to say, which I want the audience to chew on this and think about this. What would you do? And what should we do? Should we let our valuation, how we value art, be influenced by the politics of the artist, by our feelings about the politics of the artist? Woody Allen deals with this all the time, right? Because, I mean, for decades, right, he's been accused of rape and incest and whatever, I guess, yeah, with Sunni, and so all the feminists have called for boycotting him. And meanwhile, not recently, but people don't realize, for like the first 20 years of Woody Allen, he was clearly the most brilliant filmmaker in the world. Go watch Annie Hall and tell me that's not the most brilliant piece of cinema ever made. But people boycotted him and said, I can't like a Woody Allen movie anymore. I don't want to watch Woody Allen movies anymore. He produces one per year. That's his thing. He has a thing where every year he has produced a movie. And probably 50% of them are great, which is a stupendous rate. But yeah, and people did that with him. They've done it with other artists, of course. And it's a thing. And it's just, yeah, it's crushingly sad to me. What, if I want to be really cold and analytical and correct about it, but it also sounds a little bit like mean and nerdy, I suppose. But this is, I mean, if you want to get at like the cause, the origin of this whole thing with Israelis and Avishai Cohen trio and my feelings about it and everybody's feelings, it's Zionism. I mean, what Zionism did, and this is what really infuriates me more than anything, is it put Jews into that position. It said, and continues to say every single second of every single day, we represent Jews, and Jews need to kill children to have a nation state. We need to kill lots of children to have a nation state. We're the only ones that need to do that, but we need to kill these kids to have a nation state. Even though we are the wealthiest, most powerful people in the United States of America, we still need to have this nation state over here, and we have to kill lots and lots of children to have it. Just the way it is, because these Arabs are anti-Semitic, is the entire argument boiled down. It's really hard. So anyway, it's gosh, I don't know. Like, if Avishai Cohen had come out, as I said, as some like Ben Gvir supporter, and wants to ethnically cleanse Gaza and drop a nuke in the West Bank, and what would I have thought about his music? The incredible beauty of it. And the trio did a concert in the Netherlands just literally 3 or 4 days ago that's on YouTube, and I strongly urge you all to watch it and listen to it if you like. And it's jazz. It's definitely jazz, but it's quite accessible, I think, and just really, really beautiful. But what do we think about it if those people had these terrible views about killing children? I don't know.
Music and art is supposed to like connect you to somebody else's experience, and if enough people feel this way strongly about something, or if they just happen to be Israeli by birth and feel some loyalty to their family, I think the whole purpose of music is to put yourself in their shoes and realize the universal human experience, that they're not for the grace of God go I, and reach across the aisle and transcend that. That's the whole purpose of music. And so definitely when it comes to anybody who's dead, I don't bother with politics on anything. And then with most people who are alive, I can usually forgive them, and especially with like instrumental music, as long as they're not like actively recruiting or funding something I don't like, then I'm all for it. And most musicians are artists for art's sake, and they just want to make more art. And the politics are incidental, and sometimes their music speaks to the opposite of their personal politics, and they don't even realize it because musicians are complicated people, and sometimes they care more about the art than they do their politics, and the art reaches at a truth that their politics don't.
Beautifully put. That's what you just stated. I feel like should be the policy, like for everyone's personal policy regarding art and politics. I just want to say, and so that it's perfectly put, I just want to say one thing about my particular take on this issue broadly, not Israel, but about not caring about politics. That issue about the people, like apparently Abishai Cohen, lots of people in Israel, lots of people everywhere, lots of people in Palestine who just don't care about politics, even if their country's at war, even if they're being bombed by some foreign invader, whatever. They simply don't care about politics. They just want to go away, maybe,
or they were traumatized since childhood to have some sort of loyalty to the nation state of Israel and feel some fealty to it.
Or to Palestine.
Yeah.
Same thing. Where it doesn't matter. People who know my positions, I guess, on Palestine and Israel and NATO and Ukraine and foreign policy and the wars and all of, might have a slightly wrong idea about my politics. If you read Renegade History, and you've heard me speak about non-participation, perpetual opposition to ruling elites, you might be able to intuit. I don't talk about this. I haven't talked about this publicly, but I'm saying it now. You might be able to intuit that my deepest sympathy and deepest solidarity is with the people in Gaza and the people in Tel Aviv who don't care, who don't want to care, who are not interested in politics. They might care, but they're not political people, and they just want to make art. I'm thinking of, in fact, I think it's in Max Blumenthal's Killing Gaza, Dan Cohen and Max Blumenthal's searing, incredible documentary called Killing Gaza this is during the 2014 massacre in Gaza. But they do a whole interview with this very young woman. I think she's like maybe 20, 21, who's an artist in Gaza. I think she was in Gaza City or maybe Khan Yunis. She liked to paint pictures. And her dream was to go present her stuff at international film festivals art festivals, and she couldn't get out of Gaza at the time. And that was the tragedy of it, which it certainly is. But she said, over and over again that she just doesn't want to be involved in it. And she wishes she weren't born into that. And imagine that. I mean, we are all born into politics, but being born into war politics like that, perpetual war politics where you are forced, as you said, to take a side, literally at the point of many guns. Those are the people with whom I have the greatest sympathy and solidarity. I'm thinking of people who are draftees. I'm talking about every draftee in every country ever. Every person who has been drafted into a military in every country in the world, regardless of the conflict. Those are my people. That's who I stand with. It's the you could call it the anti-political masses. They're always the majority. They're always a super majority. Those who don't want to be political and would rather just live life and enjoy life as well as they can before they die. Clearly a better way to live than being political. I unfortunately was born into a political family, so in a way I was forced into it. It's a curse and a tragedy. I've talked to, of course, I've had political people on Unregistered many times, and I've asked them many times about this. It's sort of a curse being a political person. You can't stop being interested in it, so you can't stop yourself, really. But it makes for unhappiness. Politics is about power. It's about force. Because of that, it's about violence and killing. It's about anger. It's about enemies. It's about attacking enemies. It's adversarial. It is, which is fun. I like football too, but football is a game. This is for real, which makes it even worse. And then when you start arguing about issues that involve, 20,000 dead kids on one side or the other, it just makes for a very unhappy life. And it's unfortunate. And I wish that more people could live outside of politics in that way psychologically, even though sometimes, of course, many times I wish to God Americans would care more about American foreign policy and see what we're doing in the Middle East, and then we'll change the policies and we'll have no more wars and end the empire yet. So if only Americans would start caring about politics more. I'm always torn. I want that, but I also want Americans to do largely what most Americans do, which is not care at all about politics and care a lot about their business, about their job, about their family, about their life, about the TV shows they're watching. I mean, literally, that's kind of the most important thing. That's all beautiful, actually, stuff. And that I think is where happiness resides. If we're interested in happiness, we should be anti-political. But then again, Trotsky was right when he said that you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. It is the conundrum. Do you have any thoughts about that? Before we move to the news, which we should do?
Well, I know the theme of the last month has been like Trump bringing everybody happiness, which is
Kamala.
No,
joy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's funny that Kamala's campaign centered on joy when, like, Trump
Her name's
obviously. I'm sorry, I don't even. Who are we talking about? Who you keep saying this name? I don't.
Her name's Kamala.
Who?
So racist. Okay. Go ahead. I'm just sick of the racism around here. But go ahead.
Oh, shoot. I'm just pronouncing it the way Bruce Springsteen pronounces it.
Kamala.
Yeah. Trump actually, like, brings a smile to people's faces by serving them McDonald's. And he's the anti-political political figure. I believe Gavin McInnes talked about this in 2016, that he's like the drunk guy at the bar screaming at the TV saying, you know what, I could fix that. And that he's an American pop culture icon. And yeah, because Americans don't care about politics, they elected the guy who is on their reality TV show as the boss to be the boss of the country. And somebody with no political caring or instincts is the first actual anti-war person we've had in this position of power. And the biggest hope we have to stopping these wars is the guy that doesn't care about politics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Like his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. That's what he'll take care of that. He'll make sure there's no more. He'll make sure there's no more wars. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Little Marco Rubio.
Pete Hegseth, although he won't make it, but if he were to make it, he's going to make Secretary of Defense. Can you believe that Trump thought Pete Hegseth was going to be the Secretary of Defense?
Well, we'll see. I think the appointing of, well, I think it's brilliant appointing Rubio and all the establishment types as much as he has. And then appointing Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, Matt Gaetz, RFK Jr. at the same time. It shows the American people where their alliances are, because the Congress people who are complaining about Matt Gaetz but aren't raising a word about Marco Rubio are really incriminating themselves here. And it also buys him some credit to get the anti-war types in, but yeah.
You heard Darren Beattie debate Max Blumenthal, apparently.
Did I? No, I didn't.
Did you hear that? Oh, you did?
No.
Oh, really? Because that's wow. Because that's Darren Beattie's argument. Mm-hmm. And Darren Beattie is, I consider to be probably the most interesting and serious intellectual in the MAGA world. He was a speechwriter for Trump, but PhD from Hopkins, I think, or something, whatever, political theory guy. I know him actually through Michael Millerman. But very serious thinker, really smart guy, and I've followed him for years, and I've always been a fan of his. He debated Max Blumenthal about Trump's picks and about what they mean on Zero Hedge a few days ago. Max wiped the floor with him, I thought, and it really showed that MAGA is not prepared at all to hold power. And they don't, and also that MAGA doesn't really understand what kind of power they have. They don't really understand who they're dealing with. There's a lot of naivete still in this movement. Darren Beattie, who's like the most cynical, smartest, analytical, political beast you've ever come across, he had all these like flowery things kind of to say about Marco Rubio and about Mike Waltz and all these like crazy neocon super hawks that boiled down to sort of a game theory, I guess, which is this, what you were getting at. Oh, Trump is appointing all these lunatics. He said this. Darren Beattie said this. Nut jobs, I think he used the term. That's how he described Trump's appointments, right? This is a pro-Trump. This is not just a pro-Trump guy. This is a guy in the Trump world. I mean, he's one of the Trump's advisors, has been. He's appointing all these nut jobs to, because it'll scare Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un to negotiate with him, because it'll show the Republican base that we're not so radical and crazy because we have these old establishment neocon types in the foreign. It'll serve all these sort of instrumental game playing purposes, right? I'm like, is that what this is all about? I mean, for me, I would like everyone, if I were president, everyone in my cabinet to be, in agreement with me on the basic principles. And you don't have that at all in the Trump cabinet. And if you look at Tulsi Gabbard, I suppose, compare her to any of his foreign policy people, even though she's far from perfect on this stuff, she's certainly quite contradictory with his foreign policy picks. And even RFK to some extent, these people want to Matt Gaetz, the three that I really like, the domestic picks, Gaetz, RFK, and Tulsi, for what they are assigned to do. I love it from a left and libertarian perspective. You can't do much better than that, actually. I mean, they're talking about abolishing the FBI and the CIA. I mean, I think the three of them have said things like that, right? But I mean, so what if that's what this is all? If that's what he's doing, he's just doing all this sort of triangulation and playing one faction off against another, and that's why he's appointing these people. Is that what we want, or don't we want someone who, as Secretary of State, loudly and clearly articulates an America First philosophy about America's place in the world? Don't we want that instead of Marco Rubio, who is owned by who used to be little Marco Rubio, according to Donald Trump when he didn't like him, who is owned by the Cuba American lobby and owned by APAC. I think he gets more than $1 million per year from APAC, and he's owned by the Atlantic Council, and and also, I mean, it's wow. Okay, the other argument that Darren Beattie makes that, okay, I get it. I've heard many people say this, is that what Trump did in his foreign policy picks was select people who would be utterly, totally, always loyal to him. We talked about this last week, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And okay, that makes me feel a little bit better because I think that's true. I think it's quite true in this case. I can't think of any of these guys ever disagreeing with the Donald. And that's good because I think Trump's instincts on foreign policy and war and peace are much better than theirs. So like if he wins in these debates inside the White House, that's good. I'd rather he win than they win. But Jesus, what the fuck does that mean? Like you're picking your cabinet to play games with and like play one side off the other and appease this faction to get that faction. I don't know. I guess that's just not the way I think about it. Mm-hmm. But maybe you do because you're cynical.
No, I'm not cynical. I think
and racist.
This is just how Washington works, I think. And if he had, I don't know, name your pick of whatever anti-war people, like I don't know if he gets Scott Ritter as national security advisor or something, like he's going to get assassinated. Like,
oh, I see.
Yeah,
yeah, but Scott's willing to get assassinated for that.
Yeah,
so
but
let's
Trump
let him do it.
Trump
Let
wants
him
to
do
stay
it.
alive.
I would nominate Scott Ritter for Secretary of State, knowing full well that he'd be assassinated, and as long as he knows it, that's what those people are for. And sorry, that's kind of a slight dig at Scott Ritter, backhanded compliment, perhaps. Go ahead.
But I kind of don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, because we have Biden basically as a lame duck president instigating World War III, using American weapons that have to be authorized by Americans. No Ukrainian knows how to use these weapons. What is it called? The ATACMS? The ATACMS, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Long-range missiles can go 190 miles into Russia's border, and
it's spelled the acronym is ATACM.
Yeah,
ATACMS. They call it ATACMS. Yeah, they're long-range ballistic missiles, hypersonic ballistic missiles that do massive damage. Yeah,
and
they travel. They travel, I think, 300 to 500 miles, and can take out a small village, or like part of a town. So yeah, go ahead. I mean, so they launched 6, we think. Well, we don't. All we know is from what Russia has reported.
Yeah.
By the way, so Russia reported 6 were fired, 5 were shot down, 1 landed. Nobody was killed. I think a few people went to the hospital. Minor damage is what Russia is reporting, I think. Right?
Yeah.
This was yesterday. This is brand new, by the way. This is just happening.
And Biden authorized this Sunday, and it seems like, and there's been also pushes to just keep sending more money, another $8 billion to Ukraine. I think Blinken has been saying we need to authorize as much money as possible in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So we have an outgoing administration doing everything to entrench America into a war that the electorate just rejected wholeheartedly in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So what we're witnessing is a major world historic pivot by, you could call it the U.S. government, you could call it the United States, you could call it the American Empire, from Europe to Asia, essentially, Middle East and Asia. The Democrats have had for 2 decades now Russia in their crosshairs, and strategically, following on Leonid Brzezinski's dictum that we must control Eurasia, the Eurasian landmass must be controlled by the United States to control the world. The Democratic Party followed Brzezinski's dictum for the most part. The Republicans are usually, honest to God, too dumb and non-intellectual to have even read the book, The Grand Chessboard. I'm not kidding. And so they didn't follow it. The Democrats did. And so that's why they have focused so closely on Russia. That's why the Clintons and the Obamas and the Vicki Newlands and because they're all Democrats, have been going hard against Russia since Putin took over in 2000. That's why they pushed NATO all the way up to the Russian border. This is why they went all in on Project Ukraine with tens of billions of dollars and God knows how many, not what we sort of know, hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainian men and women in service of this cause and all the rest of it. The Republican establishment, the Mitch McConnells and the Mitt Romneys, those people, John McCain before he died, went along with it, like the Republican establishment has always gone along with every Democratic Party American imperialist foreign policy venture. Every one of them, even the Iraq War. Remember who the neocons were? Remember who Paul Wolfowitz and all those guys were originally? They're all Democrats. Every major American war has been initiated by Democratic liberal thinkers. MAGA comes along and looks at this shit, and their base is veterans, a lot of veterans of those very wars, the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, which now looks like also a complete, not looks like, is obviously a complete waste of time and money and resources and blood and treasure. And they say, no, you know who really killed our troops? Iran. Arming the Shia militias in Iraq and Baghdad and Sadr City. It's Iran. They're the bad guys. They're the ones who blew up that Marine barracks in 1983 in Lebanon. That's what Trump's people were into. And Trump likes those guys, the Marine Corps generals, etc. And they really had a thing for Iran. He also likes Steve Bannon and the Breitbart wing of the MAGA movement, who have all been about the CCP and China being the principal evil in the world that must be vanquished.
Yeah, that was the big thing about the cabinet picks, is that they didn't seem like war hawks in general. They seemed like China hawks more specifically.
Iran hawks and China hawks both, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
No, I mean, they don't even, to say they're pro-Israel is actually not quite right. They're really more anti-Iran. There are some people in the Trump world who are clearly like crazed Zionist types, but even they, state as their principal objective the destruction of Iran. So that's what they're about. So we know that it's bad news for the people of Iran and China. The only question is how bad the news is, and I don't know. I've heard Peter Thiel, who is underestimated as to his influence in the Trump administration. He's much more influential than Elon Musk, I think, by the way, because Peter Thiel has been advising Trump, not just intellectually, but on particular appointments since his first administration. Since when Elon Musk was still a Democrat, Peter Thiel has been in the Trump world, very close to Trump, and giving him advice. He's the one who introduced J.D. Vance to Donald Trump. Peter Thiel is the guy who...
he introduced J.D. Vance to politics, first of all.
Yeah, right. He's also bankrolled some friends of mine, interesting figures, I will just say, on, you can call it the alt-right, the new right, interesting figures in the libertarian world. He's bankrolled them for years, and there's sort of a funneling of all that energy into the Trump movement by Peter Thiel also, over the last 8 years.
Vivek most recently.
Yeah. So let me. All right. So I forget why I brought in Thiel.
China.
But what's really going on, and this is what people really need to be aware of, is that this is a massive pivot from the Democrats, who are all in on going against Russia, feeling that Russia was the main objective for regime change, to not the Republican establishment, but to MAGA, which has had Iran and China in its crosshairs for decades. And so sending the ATACMS missiles into Russia, this is the first time American missiles have ever entered Russian territory, by the way, everybody. This is US-made missiles. I think they're made in St. Louis. Going into and landing in and exploding inside of Russia proper. Do we not see how big this is? Imagine if Russian missiles came into the United States and exploded inside of one of our towns or cities. I think we'd see it as a fairly big news story, wouldn't we? What is it? So this is the last gasp of the anti-Russia hawks within the American imperial intellectual establishment. So all this is a shifting, I think, of strategies within the American empire. There's no anti-imperialist force in here. There's nobody calling for reducing the number of military bases. There's no one calling for reducing the American military budget. In fact, they're all Democrats, Trump, everybody is calling for increasing the military budget. No one is saying we need to bring home the troops from the Middle East, let Israel sort out its problem. No, it's everybody is calling for more intervention, which is just so hideously depressing at this point. I don't know what to say, because Trump was, and even I thought this, at least something of a breath of fresh air. At least he was asking questions about the empire that no one had ever asked before, which is true. But now I'm looking at the foreign policy team he's established. I mean, God, I wish he had flipped it, sort of. I wish Tulsi were in foreign policy and Pete Hegseth were in charge of, domestic stuff. But they differ with the Democrats on foreign policy in only one way, which is they want to kill the Chinese and the Iranians more than the Russians right now. And by the way, sometime down the road, real soon, they might be happy to kill Russians too, because remember, Trump was the first to arm Ukraine to kill Russians with. The first Russians who were killed in this war were killed by American-made weapons that Trump sent to Ukraine. The pivot to Asia, which actually, ironically, Obama started, is what Trump really wants. And by Asia, he means China and Iran. So, will this mean, it's going to mean, I think at a minimum, Israel bombing many sites in Iran with the assistance of the United States. I mean, I think that's a minimum of what's going to happen soon. That seems like a guarantee. Will it be more than that? We hope not. Will there be any troops on the ground? I sort of doubt it, but that's the question. How much bombing will there be? Will they bomb civilian areas in the big cities in Iran? I don't know. But that's what we don't know about Trump. How anti-Iran is he? How belligerent is he willing to go? Okay. Netanyahu and most of the Israelis, and I mean like probably a majority of the population of Israel, want to bomb the fuck out of Iran and kill a large portion of the population and do a regime change war and install an Israel-friendly, US-friendly government there. And I'm not kidding. That's not an exaggeration. You can ask or listen to every single Israeli public intellectual and government official and every American who's in favor of them. That's what they're calling for. They're making no bones about it. Okay, so that's Iran. That's what we're waiting on. Hopefully, they'll just bomb the nuclear sites. They'll just bomb military targets and leave it at that. And we'll just kick the can down the road in the Middle East further. Hopefully, Trump won't launch a full-scale war or let Israel launch a full-scale war. Don't know. China? So here's a theory that's just been put forward about what Trump might be ready to do. We've heard a lot about BRICS, right? We've seen the rise of BRICS since he was president. BRICS wasn't really much of a thing when he was president. It has been a hell of a thing since Trump was in office and has grown. How many countries are now part of BRICS? How many massive economic deals have been initiated within BRICS? What's Trump going to do? Trump has not spoken about BRICS. Biden has not spoken about BRICS. It's not talked about. It's a new whole international alliance that is posed opposite, antagonistically against the United States right now. What are we going to do? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Pakistan. There's many other countries that have been added again and again. Iran, establishing a formal alliance. What will the United States do with this new axis? What will Trump do? And some people who are actually sympathetic to Trump or close to Trump have said he's going to cut a deal because he's all about the art of the deal. He's going to propose a deal with BRICS. Again, this is just speculative, but I think it's possible. And it's sort of pointed to what we can think about happening, what we can expect maybe to happen with Trump. It is possible that Trump will strike a deal with Russia, China, India, BRICS, Brazil, in which they allow some trading using the dollar, which is what the BRICS is mostly all about, the dollar dominance. in exchange for allowing Russia and China, etc., back into the SWIFT international banking system, which they were cut out of after the Ukraine war started. So, like, in other words, that Trump, again, these are analysts who are sort of around the Trump world, are saying, like, there's a chance that Trump could cut a deal that will, I think, bring a whole lot of peace with Russia and China. They will use the dollar more in exchange for Trump allowing them back into the international economic system that's dominated by the US. So that could be good. That could be really good, in which case I will be I will have warm feelings about the Trump administration. So that's the positive potential. The negative potential, I mean, you name it, it's China. There's Taiwan. Taiwan has been making noise. I mean, China's been making noise about reuniting Taiwan through military action. There could be a massive war invading Taiwan. The United States could be in a position of having to defend Taiwan militarily. Will Trump do that? If he does, we are now at war with China, which is the second largest military in the world and has the second largest, most powerful navy in the world. And I don't know, the MAGA movement, if you watch Steve Bannon in the War Room and all the MAGA people over the last 8 years, they rant and rave about the CCP and the evil, the demonic evil of the CCP, leading me to believe that Trump's supporters and followers want war with China. Does he want war? I don't know, but everybody around him seems to. Elbridge Colby, everybody should be aware of this guy. Elbridge Colby, he was Trump's main China advisor in his first term. He's an academic, intellectual, super anti-China hawk, but he's a serious thinker. He's in Trump's inner circle. He has his ear on China. So watch, he's on Twitter. Watch what Elbridge Colby is saying. His father was William Colby, who was the director of the CIA. By the way, Trump draining the swamp, really? Not so sure. Anyway, where we go with China is largely going to be determined by this dude, Elbridge Colby, through Trump's brain. It could be a hot war over Taiwan. It could be the Marines landing on the beaches of Taiwan and fighting the Red Army and the Chinese Red Army right there in Taiwan. It could be, I don't know, some sort of economic squeeze, sanctions, tariffs combination, which certainly Trump has been leaning toward. It could be a hot war, is what I'm saying. It could be a big war. And Russia and China now are basically formally allied. So Russia will be involved and implicated if that happens. I'm not saying Trump's going to do this. I don't think he wants to do this. But it is a possibility given the forces arrayed around him, given the base that elected him. They'd be okay with a war with China, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Would MAGA be okay with a war with China or Iran, a direct hot war? That's really the question, right? The MAGA base, the people who supported Trump, the people who voted for him, the people who are passionate about Donald Trump, would they be okay with a direct boots on the ground war with evil Iran or evil China? That's what I want to know. And if the answer is yes, then I'm done with them. But I have a feeling that there might be a more interesting, nuanced answer to that question from that crowd. What do you think?
I think they see any war as a failure of the administration. If there's a
Really?
war. Yeah.
All right.
He campaigned on no new wars. He campaigned on that's something I accomplished. And he campaigned on peace through strength. And if your strength doesn't result in peace, then what was the point of the strength in the first place? So I think that's how MAGA sees it. You'd have to go hardcore propaganda to get like half of MAGA on board with a new war with China or Iran. I mean, there's part of MAGA that will probably reflexively follow the orders of their general if if they're given a sufficient enough reason to hate China and Iran to the point of going to war with them. But any sophisticated thinker is going to see this as a failure. But still on Biden sending ATACMS into Russia. You think it's not going to result in a horrible escalation? InfoWars right now is calling this World War III. All the political people are calling this World War III, and that this is was Putin's red line, that if you use long-range missiles, the nuclear option is now on the table, as they've been publicly rewriting their nuclear policy. And they're now building nuclear bunkers en masse in Russia. Do you see this as the step that gets us to nuclear war? And the last cries of a dying administration as the shit libs are kicked out is to plunge us into war?
Yes. When you were talking, I wanted to I was reaching for my phone to refresh Twitter to see if they actually had launched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what was it? A month or 2 ago? 2 months ago, Ukraine invaded Kursk. That's the precipitating piece of this. It was the invasion of Kursk in Russia by Ukraine. Killed a bunch of people. They still occupy it. Russia has amassed, I think, 50,000 troops to kick them out of Kursk. Of course, with CIA help and training, etc. Not that we admit it, but everything that Ukraine does is assisted by the United States. And then, right around the election, some reports came out all of a sudden that North Korean troops, soldiers from North Korea, had been brought in by Russia to fight against the Ukrainians in Kursk. And in fact, I think Bloomberg reported that 100,000 North Korean troops were there. Guess how many North Korean troops in Russia there's been evidence of? 0. They might be there. We're still waiting for evidence that they're there.
Have you seen the reports that these North Koreans are getting access to the internet for the first time and can't perform their functions because they're
jerking off to porn?
Yeah,
they make shit up. I think that was Reuters, by the way. Reuters. I found this out. I didn't quite know this about Reuters. Reuters is probably the most corrupt of all the major news agencies that report on international affairs. Wall Street Journal is probably second, but Reuters straight up make shit up. They make up quotes from Hamas officials and quote all the time. They'll come up with it. Hamas admits that half the casualties are Hamas fighters. Unnamed Hamas official says. Totally made up. Bloomberg reports that 100,000 North Korean troops are fighting against the Ukrainians for Russia right around the election time. After the election, Trump and Biden meet in the White House, talk about issues extensively. The big issues. Biden does not tell Trump that he is going to authorize the ATACMS missiles strikes into Russia. By the way, do you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 2 days, I think 2 days before he authorized it. Yeah, so this is the last gasp of the liberal democratic anti-Russia faction before they have to turn it over to the anti-Iran, anti-China, MAGA Republican faction. That's all. They all want the United States to be dominant throughout the world. They all agree on that. They all want military bases, U.S. military bases everywhere. They want a ginormous military budget. They want the biggest military ever assembled on Earth. They all agree on that. MAGA, all of them. Donald Trump and Joe Biden agree on that. Sorry, they do. They even agree on NATO, apparently. They certainly agree on Israel. My God, how gross is that? But they agree on the basic contours of the American empire. And that's why, yes, I love what Tulsi's going to do with intelligence agencies. I'm very excited about even Kennedy doing what he's going to do with HHS. I think that's very positive, probably. I think Matt Gaetz is going to be the greatest attorney general in history, like by far. I think he's amazing and will do. I'm a super fan of Matt Gaetz, believe it or not. But it's going to be, from so far, I just don't see anything but catastrophe and mass death and horrific injustice coming from the foreign policy team. But we debated this last week, and you were very persuasive. Mm-hmm. Say what you want about that, and then let's move on to the next issue.
Well, there's a good transition here.
Good.
This is what anybody in Congress, including Joe Biden in 2007, would consider an impeachable offense. And Thomas Massey posted a clip of Joe Biden in 2007 talking about a potential strike by the Bush administration into Iran without congressional approval as an impeachable offense. And so, using U.S. weapons to launch strikes into a foreign country without congressional approval is an impeachable offense, especially as a lame duck president who was just widely rejected by the masses. This should be the number one priority right now, is to impeach Joe Biden over this and to send a precedent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing to do that?
Yeah. Thomas Massey is on it, but congressional Republicans right now are talking about trans bathrooms. And that's all that the discourse is about right now. Like, Nancy Mace has tweeted 262 times in the last 36 hours about her precious bathroom time. And that's the priority right now.
She has a great rack, though.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Mace?
Nancy Mace or Sarah?
Nancy Mace has a great rack. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Don't you? Oh, you don't know?
Yeah,
Nancy Mace got a boob job when she was in Congress.
Really?
And that's what people are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Trans bathrooms and Nancy Mace's fake tits. Not whether we will have another world war. Quite amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you were going to say, where are we going with that?
Yeah, this is just my public call to, if anybody has any influence over congressional Republicans, get them to shut up about the trans bathrooms and get them to impeach Joe Biden over unconstitutionally bombing Russia.
So the idea of impeaching a president over an actual serious consequential issue is thrilling to me.
Yeah.
Even more thrilling than Nancy Mace's fake tits. That would be amazing to actually finally not Monica Lewinsky's blowjobs, mm-hmm. not Trump's whatever it was that they alleged he might have done regarding Ukraine, or which turned out to be even the opposite of what they said. None of that shit. No, something that's real. It's about war and peace. It's about saving lives. That would be nice. It won't happen for that reason. Mm-hmm. So we got 20 minutes. Let's do, what else do we have?
Yeah, there's more on that story. I do want to talk about Alex Jones.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He was not, his site was not sold to the Onion. Onion, yeah. They tried to do an auction of it in secrecy. I believe this was Wednesday, or what was it? It was a couple days ago. And the site was down for one day. And Alex Jones was already broadcasting from the new alexjones.network that he had set up for if and when this would happen. And then the judge shut it down because this was like a totally illegal, illegitimate auction happening behind his back. The company that Alex Jones uses to sell supplements put in a bid for twice as much cash as the Onion's bid, and then they rejected that based off of some idea that future earnings from InfoWars would be used to pay for a bigger deal in the future. But we have an instance of lawfare temporarily squanched, which is great news, as all the lawfare has been going one direction and it's been pretty pessimistic. But it seems that the lawfare isn't going to happen indefinitely. At least it might pause a little bit under a Trump administration. And you have Alex Jones able to continue even if his parent site gets sold, that he could still put up a microphone anywhere and keep going. And he's launched a counter lawsuit against the Onion now and against the Sandy Hook families. So maybe Alex Jones will finally get some justice for the horrible psychological damage that the Sandy Hook families have inflicted upon him.
The $1 billion judgment.
Yeah.
I remember that show we did about that still very vividly. Yeah. So this is actually, I think, a segue into the bigger issue you want to talk about, which I think is a huge, really important thing to talk about, which is the cultural shift.
Oh, yes.
That this election either augurs, there's a literary term, augurs, or is symptomatic of, or something. It corresponds with this. There's something going on in the culture that the election in part has brought about, I think. And yeah, I saw it at the UFC. You know, I was thinking there's a major American cultural institution, which the UFC is, that is openly, aggressively promoting one political figure. I mean, it's who is a right winger? Well, who is Donald Trump, who's not an establishment. I mean, this has never been seen before. We've never seen anything like that.
To what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, he has that support in the UFC because of his history of patronage to martial arts. He's always been front and center with whether it's boxing, WWE, mixed martial arts, and he's always had a close relationship with promoters and Dana White especially. So this is just the beginning of their loyalty to each other is basically tit for tat business and knowing each other on a personal level, and so it is all cultural before it is political. And it's just a continuation of that taking over the political realm.
Yeah. I had several coaches who were definitely MAGA types, both in LA and in Oregon. And I think it's actually not about that. I think it's about the masculinity.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
No, I mean, primarily the masculinity, and they're not that dumb. I mean, the guys I'm talking about, they see it also, the dishonesty of the liberal establishment, as being not masculine, which I get. I'm okay with that, but that's how they see it, right? And that's their problem with it. It's the dishonesty which they see as feminine, but they would use probably an F word to describe it. And I do think that's really the rage of it. That's why UFC, martial arts, boxing, that whole world is pro-Trump. I think it's from the masculine. It's Rogan. I mean, that's the Rogan world. You know, I think you could see it coming. You could see Rogan making that endorsement of Trump for years. You could see it coming. It just took him a while, right?
Yeah, it took him a while. Yeah,
but that was inevitable. That was inevitable, though, right? I mean, and I do think it's this defense of masculinity that brings these people together. I do. Which, you know, we've talked about this a lot. I have mixed feelings about that, but the repression of masculinity is a real thing over the last half century in this culture, especially in the elite culture in America. It's a real thing, and it shouldn't be underestimated how much that led to the election of Donald Trump. I do think that's a big thing. I mean, just look at the demographics of the electorate, right? Who voted for Trump? We know this. It's dudes.
Yeah,
that's the big demo group that voted for him.
He capitalized on low propensity male voters, people who have been told to kill themselves by the Democratic Party, people who have been told to just roll over and die and assume no place of power to transform their identity. Like, these are the people that Donald Trump capitalized on, that have been seen as beneath contempt by the Democratic establishment. And these are really the backbone of the country.
So Yes, men have been insulted a lot in the last few decades. I've been very mad about this. I've talked about this a lot. I've been I've had sexist insults leveled at me many times, especially on college campuses, by the way.
Yeah, to bring it back to COVID real quick, I think all of COVID was primarily a sexual humiliation ritual played on the men of this country.
Wait, what? Do that. Let me hear this. What?
Well, yeah, it was basically forcing productive men to don a mask and to submit to the most overwhelmingly feminine nanny state that has ever existed, to kill the will inside of men and to lock them inside their homes where they can be have unlimited access to their vices of alcohol and pornography to destroy their will. And this was a reclaiming of the masculine spirit by supporting Trump.
I was going to say, when you started talking, oh, that's the reason I hated it so much. And then when you got to the weed and porn part, I was like, oh, wait, that's why I loved it so much.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm confused again.
That's the cheese and the rat trap. The cheese and the rat trap of your full submission is, oh, I'll live in the pod, but I'll have all my pleasures forever. Yeah.
I know. Yep. Yeah, in the Bay Area, and anybody who lives here knows this, but this is true for probably every major city in the United States right now. Housing and food are unaffordable, but marijuana and wine are super cheap. You can get a full bottle of really good wine for $4, and you can get a full gram of weed, THC, which is like, I don't know, 1,000 hits for like $20. So you can be poor and be well stocked with weed and wine, but you'll live on the street and you won't be able to eat anything. Is that a conspiracy? No. But there is no coincidence, as Steve Bannon says. All right, 10 minutes. What else? There's more.
Yeah, the vibe shift. Also.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I do think we have to again acquiesce to the people who voted for Trump 3 times and say, you were right all along. You're better than us. We bow before your greatness. You are in charge now. Thank you for keeping this movement alive, because without you, we'd be hopeless. We have to say that, and especially in the context of football players doing the Trump dance when they score a touchdown, or John Jones when he knocks out Stipe Miocic. He does the Trump dance, and he, like a Roman gladiator, gives his belt to Trump and does the predator handshake with him. So it's now, for the first time, becoming acceptable to be MAGA. This was the big thing about him going to Madison Square Garden. If he goes to Madison Square Garden at any point between 2015 and 2023, it's going to be met with Antifa, and his supporters are going to be maced and beaten up. And you can't have even a small gathering, but yet he has a full show of force with tens of thousands of supporters. No real resistance. The tables are completely flipped. And MAGA is in complete cultural ascendancy in a way that it never was in the last 8 years.
Yeah. That's the real thing that's happening. And that's what I have my eye out on constantly. I'm looking for that. And I've seen quite a few data points to suggest that, as you said, MAGA and Trump are now or are becoming legitimate parts of American formal culture. Just starting, but they are, I think. Meaning, I've noticed in establishment media outlets and in the mouths of establishment people, words about Trump that were not just antagonistic, not just denunciations, that they start to talk about him in neutral terms, not positive. We're not getting there yet. But there's been this, and I think it's a seismic shift in sort of popular discourse about Trump, from everything's negative, everything's Hitler, everything's racist, everything's bad, to talking about him like, and then President Trump will enact this policy. Neutral language, neutral tone. I've never heard before regarding Trump. It's happening. And the UFC, of course, I mean, the UFC is still like a fringy thing. It's still sort of a countercultural institution, believe it or not. But it's a big one. And it's not the only one. My God, the NFL, holy shit. I mean, full of baseball, Christ. I think every white player in MLB is a Trump supporter. But Rogan said it, right? He said that in recent months that he's been inundated with messages from hippie friends of his who said they're unable to say positive things about Trump and they're grateful that Rogan has said them for them. Yeah, I mean, it's here. I mean, we know about the 25% of black men, I guess, black male voters, I should say, who voted for him. That's big. But you can see it. It's not just the voters. You can see like lots of prominent black men and even a few women in the media being outwardly, unapologetically pro-Trump. It's the tone, though, of the media establishment, of the Times, of the Post, of the Journal. It's shifted.
Yeah.
They are now, right? They're now talking about him in ways that are that legitimate him.
Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski.
Oh God, yeah.
Went to the Mar-a-Lago and tried to reestablish a relationship with him.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what does this mean? I'm nervous.
Oh, bringing it back to COVID again.
Yeah.
In the depths of COVID, one of the silver linings was, you know, when everything seemed hopeless and you're like, how can the entire world fall in line with this? How can the entire world be on board with shutting down everything they loved and held so dearly, the stuff that they used to say they could not live without? And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, it's really easy to manufacture consent, actually. You just need to be in charge. And once you're in charge and you show enough force and you show enough dominance, the dominoes fall pretty quickly if you can actually get up there. And so, you know, you have early pioneers like Peter Thiel, as we brought up, who was the first person to allow Silicon Valley to covertly support Trump. And then he has friends in high places see that bet worked out, see that the Democrats weren't serving their interests even after they gave him a chance. And then now you have Elon Musk, who, I mean, as much as you hate him, he's the richest man in the world. He is a cultural pioneer. There are tons of liberals who still drive a Tesla and think that he's a genius for getting electric cars onto the mass market. So if you have somebody like that, like pushing consensus on this, it gives so many more people permission to say, you know what, maybe there's something about this. And people really aren't that rigidly ideological. Most people follow orders when given orders.
Totally correct. And, you know, and Americans in particular, I mean, just don't give a shit, as I said, except in very superficial, fleeting ways. So they'll think Elon Musk, rockets, Twitter, those are good things. Oh, rich, super rich, must be really smart. So he must be right. Not kidding. That's 90% of Americans right there. And they will, you know, push a button one way or the other based on that perception of Elon Musk. He will, by the way, have zero political power. He and Vivek, that's a big sham. You know that, right?
I mean, it's not like an official thing. It's just like an advisory committee that's not really like,
no, come on. What? No, yeah, they only have advisory power. They have no, and Congress, it's an appropriations question.
Yeah.
You know, so ultimately, and Congress controls all that stuff and like most of it. And so Congress will have to vote to ban or to eliminate agencies and departments and all the things that we think we want them to do. Ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. It's a great idea, I guess, sort of. Although, why are we excited about two dudes deciding everything about the government and what should be government and what should not? Like, I mean, why those two dudes, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy? Like the empire of the autists? Is that where we want to live? It's the Asperger's Hunger Games, that world we want to live in. Why do we think they have the right judgment? Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, do they have my value? Do they have your values? If you say yes automatically, I want you to think about that.
Yeah. Well, I don't trust
not you. I mean the viewers, the 10,000 people watching us right now. I want all of you to think about this.
They have said some nice things about Ron Paul. And they have said, hey, we'll bring him on to advise us on this mission. And they are zeroing in on the administrative state, whatever that means. So yeah. But what I think it'll be is what Vivek announced today is a podcast where there's going to be I don't know how long they're going to keep up with this, but they're going to have
podcast.
Yeah, a
right,
somewhat regular report of how the government is operating, and we'll see there. But what I like about it though is it is actually addressing the biggest problem, which is spending. So so if this centers the issue of reducing government spending, it's a step in the right direction. And it's yeah.
I mean, okay, I think it's tantamount to Trump's various statements about NATO over the years, right? Mm-hmm. Even though he continues to perpetuate the system and the United States continues to give money to NATO and prop it up and all that, he has said multiple things that undercut the intellectual legitimacy of NATO. And I think Vivek and Elon will do that for sort of government agencies in the deep state generally, which is great.
Here's what this really is it's Trump giving Elon exactly what he wanted, but not giving him any actual power. And so he gets all the support of Elon without having to actually risk anything.
And that is the art of the deal.
Yeah.
Well, the foreign policy stuff I talked about, using the lunatic neocons as, bargaining chips or whatever, leverage and negotiations with foreign leaders and all that gaming thing. That could very well be what Trump is up to. Well, that's a real possibility. I'm just calling into question whether that's preferable for us as the people who live under him. That's all.
Yeah. Here's another thing about the vibe shift that's really important. I think Trump, you're talking about him being an American institutional figure that is accepted, but he's also a mythical figure now at this point. He's literally been shot in the head. He's gone through
the ear.
Every head.
You're just so racist. It just has to be. Go ahead.
So, from real estate mogul, television icon, becomes president, gets impeached twice, has the worst fallout to where you think he's going to be in prison forever, has the worst lawfare placed against him. And the American people come back after he gets shot in the head to install him into power to become the most dominant political figure of the 21st century, destroying Barack Obama's legacy that we all thought would be how governance is going to happen forever now, is that it's going to be the Obama way of doing things. Democrats are going to be in power forever. He basically saved the Republican Party and saved this country. So he's got this mythical aura around him that cannot be touched. And so who's going to go against him? But also, did you notice who was also in Trump's posse when he was out at UFC 309? It was the usual suspects. Trump, now the new guys. I think Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard were with him. But Kid Rock was with him. Kid Rock's usually always with him at these events. But the big one was Mike Johnson. He got Speaker of the House Mike Johnson to walk out with him. So I think you could talk all you want about these war hawks, these neocons opposing Trump and plunging us into war, but don't you still want to go to the UFC and be treated with roarous applause? You want to be on Trump's side culturally. You want to be celebrated by America, and there's no greater high than having a stadium of tens of thousands of people cheer in adoration for you. And you can have that if you're on Team Trump. So this cultural patronage that Trump has is probably his most powerful asset now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if I'm going to be made fun of for being a man again. I wonder if that's going to be a thing going forward, you know?
Just support Trump. Just become more MAGA. It's that easy.
I'm going to get the hat. I have a red. I have the red hat. I just doesn't have the words on it, but I wear my red base. I can show people, but yeah. But now I'm going to put the words on it. Make America hot again. All right, we got to go. All right. If you want to hang out with me and Michael and God knows why. But we have for many years. It's awesome. Wednesday nights. I keep saying this. We changed it to Wednesday nights after Unreported every week. We have Unregistered Live. You can, by the way, someone asked me to say this. Of course, a lot of people don't want to like come and talk and like be participants and stuff and like show their face. You don't have to. You can just come and be completely anonymous. We don't know your name. We don't even know you're there. We'll just say anything, but you can watch us be crazy after this show at Unregistered Live, which is for patrons only. Go to patreon.com/unregistered, become a patron at any level. $5 will get you in to the show, to the party, to the room. Do it. But even if you don't want to do that, just support us because we should be supported. And Michael needs help. Mostly, I'm great, but Michael needs help. So be a patron of this show, of the Unregistered universe. Next week, we are going to have a whole new era of the Unregistered Academy unveiled, which is our school. If you want to become a part of that, I strongly recommend it. But starting next week, you will see a whole lot of media coming out of Unregistered Academy, all sorts of media involving our courses. It's going to be a very exciting time. So be on the lookout for that. Black Friday sale coming up at the Academy. You will want to take advantage of that. Otherwise, go to patreon.com, become a member. And Michael, you are the best. And I'll see you soon.
Yep. See you there.
Peace.
Peace. We are out.